Hey guys, today we're in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 15. Now Absalom has arrived back in Jerusalem and he's been pretty good for a while, but today we see what his ultimate goal was. And so here after Absalom, he got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. It means to make a procession before him, to make him seem like he's more important than he really is. And he goes and he stands by the city wall where people would come up and they need to speak to the king, but their problems wasn't as important to make it all the way to the king. And there he started to sow dissension, saying, man, only if there was somebody who the king would appoint that people would be able to go to. And so he's starting to sow dissension and trying to basically get Israelites to fall in love with him and say, yeah, he should be the judge. He should be somebody. Even so much so he started to play them that when they came and they would bow down, he would take them by the hand and he would lift them up. He would let nobody bow before him, showing Israel he's just a man's man. Right? He didn't want anybody to bow to him. He didn't want to be king. He just wanted to help out Israel. He was playing the ultimate politician move here. And at the end of the 4 years of doing this, Absalom said, hey, I made a vow to the Lord that I would go back to Hebron. You should let me go. And so what's happening is he's playing a spiritual card, right? There was no vow made, but he's saying, hey, let me go. Let me go back to Hebron because this is a vow that I made and I got to keep my promise to the Lord. And so David did it. David said, fine, you can go. But as he's going with ill will. He's going to basically to build up an army and a people that like him so he can take over Jerusalem. David tells him to go in peace, and 200 people went with them. But notice it says that they went with their innocence and knew nothing. People followed Absalom to Hebron, but they didn't know of his plan. But that doesn't matter, because as he arrives there and he is sowing discord and he's talking to people, it looks like he has a big following, even though they know nothing, but it allows him to gain more people to follow him. And even one of those is David's top advisors. We see that Ahithophel is his top advisor, and he follows him. He leaves David and follows him. You can see in Psalms 41, David writes about this and writes about how heartbroken it is that he steals one of his top advisors. So all this going, Absalom keeps growing and growing, getting a bigger following, and eventually David knows what's happening. He knows it's going down, and he doesn't want a war to come to Jerusalem. And so David says, hey, we got to get out of here. We got to leave Jerusalem. I don't want the sword to come to Jerusalem. I don't want people to die. So we will leave. And so David leaves, and a lot of people go with David, but notice in verse 16, it says he left 10 concubines. Now, this is the first time that we've kind of known for a while, but this is the first proof that we have that David had concubines. Not only did he have lots of wives, which are a sin in of themselves, but he had concubines. Concubines are basically legal mistresses. They're sex slaves. And so he had at least 10, probably more than 10. He just leaves 10 behind to run the house. Just in case if Absalom doesn't come, the house will be ready when David comes back. But he leaves them, and a lot of people go with him. The Cherethites, the Pelethites, the Gittites, all these people that have kind of pledge allegiance to David. Now they are going before David. They're passing on before the king. But one of them says, hey, this new guy that we see stays with him. And he says his name is Atali, the Gittite, which just means he's from Gath. He's a Philistine. And David says, hey, you're new here. Why would you even stay with me? You need to go on. And this guy says, no, I want to be with you. And David says to him, this is very important in verse 19, go back and stay with the king. This is what David's saying. David knows what is coming. He knows Absalom will be king. And he already knows in his mind and his heart that his time is ending. There will be something to come. And so he tells him to stay with the king, stay with Jerusalem, stay with Absalom. And he says, absolutely not. I will go wherever you go. You are my Lord and my king. And so they head east. They go over into Jordan. They pass over the Jordan. And what's interesting about this is this is the place that David went when he was running from Saul. This is the place that he is going where he is now running from Absalom. So though he's going there, he has some knowledge of how to survive in this place. But not only does David go, we see that Zadok and the Levites come and bring the Ark of the Covenant. David tells them to go back to Jerusalem because he says, he tells them that I believe in the Lord. And the king said, does it carry the Ark of God back? Because I found favor in the eyes of the Lord. He will bring me back and let me see both it and its dwelling place. David says, hey, take the Ark of the Covenant back, keep it safe, because my faith is in the Lord, not in the Ark. And so here we see a difference that we haven't seen before, right? It's always been that the Ark is the Lord, it is the dwelling place, but here David separates them. He knows that the Lord is greater than the presence that he has on earth at the Ark. He also says, Zadok, he says, aren't you also a seer? Aren't you a prophet? We need somebody in Jerusalem with this supernatural seeing and be able to see things so that you can pass messages to me through messenger. So go back, and that's exactly what happens. What's amazing here is kind of the rest of the story, starting in verse 30. And said, David went to the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, barefoot and his head covered. Where have we seen this before? We will see another David, another type of David, going up the Mount of Olives and weeping before the Lord. This is what Jesus did on the night of the Last Supper. He leaves the Last Supper, he goes unto the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane and weeps before the Lord. This is prophetic. Jesus did exactly what David did. And so we see a little prophetic view of what will happen. This type of David to come will do the exact same thing. He was barefoot, his head was covered, he was in mourning, he knew his time had come. And so we can see that as David does all of this, we see that he returns. Absalom comes into Jerusalem, but there Zadok and his assistants and the Levites and the people are there. And so here it seems to be at the end of this chapter that Absalom has taken over Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant is still in Jerusalem, but David has fled to the east side of the Jordan. He is in the wilderness, but there is more to come with this story. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 16. God bless.